In this video, we're going to be building an example that does the following. When you select a shape from this drop-down here and a color from this drop-down here, so let's say we do a red circle, it'll draw that shape on the screen. And we'll use jQuery, of course, to do that. So as you can see, you can select any shape and any color combination and it'll draw that. Let's look at how to do that. We'll start out with a blank HTML document. I've already put the document ready function in here because we've gone over it enough times already in previous examples, so I don't think we need to bother with typing that again. Create a div tag to hold those controls that go at the top of the page. First one will be a select. Give that an ID of selected shape. Give this two options. One will have a value of circle and a label of circle displayed to the user. The other we'll call square. We'll create a second select. This one we'll call selected color, and we'll put the colors that we're interested in displaying in here. There's yellow, green, blue, and finally the button that when clicked will actually add the shape. We'll put one more div tag here for actually outputting the shapes, and that has an ID of output. First thing we're going to do is rig up a function to the click event of the add shape button. So we'll use an ID selector, and very simply when the button is clicked, we will just append another div tag with class of shape, whatever selected shape is here, and whatever color has been selected in this option right over here. So we'll select the output tag by ID and append to that. Since one or more shapes may be added, we'll want to append rather than overwrite the contents of that tag. There are several different ways we can approach this next part. We want the div tag and thus the shape to be numbered. Recall what that looks like. Each new shape that's added has a sequence number that keeps counting up and up. So we'll create a variable down here using the same closures concept as before that'll keep track of that number. So let's add a div tag, and inside of that will actually be a span to hold the number. And then we'll increase the number here as it's being displayed using the plus count. What that does is it increases the number and then outputs that value and concatenates it with this entire string right here. The reason there's a span inside as well is because of some of the CSS rules that are included with this example. There's styling being done on the span, as you can see here. Let's see what this looks like so far. It's not quite the behavior we're expecting yet. However, in looking at the output, we can see that divs and spans are being appended to this output tag right here. So that's good. We'll need to add a little bit more code to get the shapes to actually show up. Down here, we can use another selector to get the output tag and also select the last div in the output tag. What that effectively gives us is the div tag that's just been appended to the output right here on line 36. Now we can add classes. We'll give it the shape class, which is required by our CSS to render a shape. Then we'll add another class that will grab the selected shape from this option list up here. We can use the ID selector again for that and simply call the val function. The val function gets the selected value from any input fields that it's applied to. We'll chain a third add class method here and use that to get the selected color from the select list up here. There. Use the val method again. Whenever chaining classes like this, it's a good idea for readability purposes to put each add class method on a different line. You don't have to do that, but it does make your code easier to read, especially if you're working with other developers on the same project. Let's take a look at this and see how it does. There. It's adding shapes and colors as well to the DOM. This is the behavior we were going for, and you can see the implications of using jQuery and probably some plugins to jQuery. It wouldn't be that far-fetched to be able to create something like a paint program or a drawing program, although this is a very rudimentary version. It doesn't do very much. Takeaway is that jQuery is a very powerful platform that can do a lot more than earlier versions of JavaScript, or even modern JavaScript is able to do just by itself. Another thing to talk about is this class chaining that we did right here. It might not seem intuitive that you can stack add class methods on top of each other. After all, you would expect that upon calling this first add class method, if we stack another method on top of that it's just adding a class to a class, not the original div tag. We can illustrate using the Chrome developer tools. Let's say that I'm referencing the output tag, and I want to get the last div from there. The last div is this blue square up here. Well, the Chrome developer tools will show us which object is currently being referenced by jQuery. As expected, it's this blue square right here. Now let's say that we called a method on it. Let's call the hide method. It still returns this original tag, even though that's being returned from the hide method. So if we called hide and then stacked show on top of that, it would be equivalent to just doing this, because the hide method is returning this blue square object. Thus, when I call add class, it returns the blue square with the foo class appended to it. That's why I can stack another add class method on top of that. And now it returns the blue square with both foo and bar added to it. That's good to know for when you want to do multiple things at once. For example, if you're starting with a hidden element and you want to show it and add some classes to it at the same time, you can easily do that in one compact line of jQuery. There are more concise ways to do exactly the same thing. For example, instead of having these 4 lines right here, what we could do instead, we'll comment these out for the time being to show what we could do instead, is concatenate all of them in at once. Here's the selected shape and a space, and here's the selected color. Don't forget the end quote. That's escaped because it appears inside of another set of quotes, and we want that to actually be output to the DOM. Let's take a look. There, we've built the same functionality, but instead of using 4 extra lines of JavaScript, we were able to do it in a more compact way with just this single line of JavaScript. I actually prefer the longer way of doing it because I think it's a lot easier to read, and I don't think you're sacrificing performance, at least not in this simple application. But as you've seen with jQuery, there are many different ways to accomplish something.